Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is In Case You Missed It from Kates-Boylston for the week ending Friday, August 23rd, 2024. Before I get into all of the news of the week, I do want to give a little plug to the upcoming edition of Funeral Service Insider, the newsletter. There are two biggish pieces of news that are in that, and if you're a subscriber and you haven't seen them, and this is a good chance to go see them. And if you are a subscriber, you've already seen most of them. The first is that we have some reporting on the Brooks Township, Michigan, which banned green cemeteries, actually banned all cemeteries in the town to prevent a green cemetery from opening. And they were sued and lost on their first day of court. And it was amusing because they came out and they said, we want judge, just render your decision now. We don't even want to go to trial if that's okay with you. And the judge said, it's fine with me. It's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. You lose. But it's really a little bit more complicated than that. And the town was nice enough to speak with me at length. And I was able to put that on this week's FSI just in time. The other one is a story that I published a week ago, but hasn't seen, the print version yet. And that is the story about what's going on in Chicago with the suit against Legacy Touch and 3 funeral homes who have been taking fingerprints, as pretty much everyone does. It's kind of a reaction to Illinois' biometric laws. But it's not gonna be that big a thing. And again, check out the story. It's plenty of details in the story. The shortest version is that the likelihood of them winning is slight, but there have been so many biometric lawsuits in Illinois since they passed their biometric laws that they put a cap on settlements. So you can only sue for $1,000 if you feel you've been the victim of some sort of biometric chicanery, which thumbprints aren't. And that's why you need to read the story, if just to get a sense of where thumbprints fall in this argument, because I spoke with Paul Masters of the Masters Consulting, and he laid it out really well. And again, subscribers can find that at FSI, the newsletter, on next Thursday morning. That is Thursday, the 29th. In a nice piece of news, there was a woman, Chastity Shea Patio Owens, who lives in Jennings, Louisiana, became the area's first Black woman mortician and funeral home owner. And that area is Jefferson Davis Parish in Louisiana. We have a longer story on the website, which please take a look at. Link in the show notes. But she has worked at several funeral homes in the Lake Charles area, the Cambrai Funeral Home, and later she worked at the Hickson Funeral Home. But in April of 2024, she opened the Mortuary Center of Southwest Louisiana in a renovated church building on 4 acres of land just north of Jennings. And she serves as the embalmer, funeral director, and insurance agent. And this, if you take a look, if you're a subscriber to American Funeral Director, you're going to see a feature this September. So next week, I guess, if depending upon how quick the mail is, maybe the week after. But it's called The Future is Female, and it talks about one mortuary school's first all-female graduating class. And it's increasingly clear that women are embracing funeral service and embracing not just the care aspect of it, but also the entrepreneurial aspect of it. It's not brand new, but it's making news more often, which means that it's gone from like the funeral service consciousness more into the public consciousness. And, the consumer news, when the consumer news picks something up, and this is one of the reasons I do this weekly show, is it's important to know what the consumer media is saying about funeral service, because that is how things stir up in the zeitgeist. And so this is a good story. The next one, a less good story, but another kind of zeitgeist story is on the rise. Back when everything was going on in Colorado, I wrote an editorial and I coined something that I'm calling now the Penrose effect, which is people are looking more at the operations of funeral service because of this grisly 200 bodies found, and then right before that the body brokering scandal. But what I wanted to talk about this week is a new podcast, and the podcast is about the tri-state crematory scandal, and it was 350 bodies back at the turn of the century, 2002, in Noble community in Northwest Georgia. And the idea that these stories are going to keep coming out. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, they're looking to make a Netflix series or a series of some sort out of a book called Chop Shop, which was a man in California who was using a pottery kiln, and he was processing something like 1,800 bodies a year, or it was obscene. Again, just so you know, these are out there. It is, I am in the podcasting business. And once you run out of current true crime stories, the only thing you can do is go back and look for more true crime stories. So on top of the unfortunate headlines that, you know, that seem to come up every week, they're kind of whetting the appetite for the grist that is the newspaper business. So we're going to see a lot more of these old-timey crimes coming back and being, you know, pop culture fodder. A First Nation group in Canada, the Peepakissis First Nation, is building its first funeral home. And this is something that's, I've got to be honest, freshly on my radar. I'm sure it's on your radar if you're a funeral director. But I spoke with someone a couple weeks ago for a feature that'll probably be out in early October, about doing business with Native people in America. And they have trouble oftentimes finding funeral homes to accommodate their different practices and wishes. And I spoke with someone who's essentially a freelance funeral director and works a lot with Native peoples, First Nation peoples. And this story, and again, link in the show notes, is about how one nation, not nation, they refer to them as a band, so I guess it's a smaller group of a larger tribe, has put together their own funeral home on their own property, and now they can have funerals the way they want to have them. Again, if you are in the Midwest, especially in the northern Midwest, I'm certain that you are more familiar with all of these issues than am I. But it is something that's kind of also bubbling up, and something we'll be covering with some regularity in the coming weeks in Funeral Service Insider, the newsletter. Open with a cemetery, close with a cemetery. You know, that's my motto. A Utah Municipal Cemetery is considering becoming part conservation cemetery. So they're considering opening a conservation section. This is something that's also not going away. Green burials are, I know, kind of more buzzwordy than any of us would like them to be. I think that we would all be more comfortable if, you know, it didn't seem like such a hard case. I spoke with someone about this kind of hard line in funeral service, and I don't know if it's as hard a line as we tend to think of it as. So the idea that we're having more conservation cemeteries, though, is kind of exciting, because I mean, if you are a cemetery owner, you know, the upside to the conservation cemetery is it's a little bit of front loading, but you never have to buy a drop of gasoline or pay a human being to mow that section. It's a wild section intentionally, and it encourages people to come and to kind of commune with nature. And for cemeteries that have both, I think it's a real opportunity because it recenters the idea of the cemetery as a place for visiting and for communing with nature and for kind of meditation. And we've seen a lot of this. We've covered this in American Cemetery and Cremation magazine several times. But this idea of returning to an almost 1800s perception of cemeteries as a public park for regular and non-death use that makes people start to think more about what they would like their end of life to look like. So I'm very excited about this. It's Summit County, and again, link in the show notes. The residents actually seem to be behind it, which is always good, because if the residents aren't for it, then we'll get an In Case You Missed It story about how people are afraid, like in Minnesota, where they're afraid that wolves will dig up and eat all the bodies. Link to that story in the show notes. I've done that story a couple of times because when someone says something that dumb, I can't let it go. But anyway, we're very excited about this story. It will be in the show notes. I do want to plug 2 upcoming events because I'll be hosting them, and because they're Kates-Boylston, and because I think you might like them. The first is the Marketing Summit. It is a virtual event, so it's free. You can sign up on Kates-Boylston.com, link in the show notes. And it is like a 3-hour, from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a 3-hour event. And we'll have the speakers are Michael Anderson, Jansen Lindsay, and Danielle Burmeister. Mr. Anderson and Mr. Lindsay will be talking about using multi-channel marketing to convert families. And Ms. Burmeister will be talking about how strong brands drive consumer behavior. I have spoken with them all. They're really engaging speakers. I'm terribly looking forward to this event. I think that it'll do you well to see, and it is free and it is online. And if you sign up for it and you can't make it, we will send you the link anyway, and you can watch it on the rerun. As a matter of fact, on our YouTube page as well as on our regular website, you can find all of our free webinars and free events, daily events, day-long events rather, for perusing. So if you want to refresh, or if you didn't know that you missed something, that'll give you an opportunity to see it. And it's really worth your time, even just to look and make sure that you're all caught up. The other event is September 19th. It's called How to Transform Your Business with Software, the Digital Revolution in Death Care. The presentation is by Reed Hansen of Moretrack Software. He has a story in the upcoming American Funeral Director about the difference using management software makes. Getting rid of paperwork, huge. Is a huge thing. So, in case you missed it, is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited. It was written, edited, and videoed, if you're watching on YouTube, by me, Tony Russo. Please subscribe wherever you're listening and follow us on all of the social media. If you follow me, Tony Russo by Tony Russo is my handle on LinkedIn. I try to post the stories as I post them to the Facebook page for Funeral Service Insider, as well as to the LinkedIn group for Funeral Service Insider. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next week.